This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 5th, 2017 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tap into Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Roll call, please.
Ms. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Mizio?
Here.
Mr. Fahey?
Here.
Ms. Fechner? Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Martins?
Here.
Mr. Mouse Batista?
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Here.
And Mr. Morrison.
Pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss the CSA contract and confidential personnel matters governed by attorney-client privilege, after which action may be taken. It's expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Break. All right, we're back out of executive session, and the first item is, I believe, our ethics training.
Take these and pass them around. Glenn. Thanks.
This was the one because this comes up in the discussion. Together. Yes, yep. Just having this around. This is from Mark.
Got enough?
Good evening, members of the board, members of the administration, members of the community. Thank you for having me here this evening. Does everybody have a copy of the Code of Ethics that I handed around? Enough copies? Good.
We need one more.
What's that?
We need one
One more for Mr.
Oh, you
Fahey.
did?
Yeah, I think I do.
There should be a copy of the PowerPoint as well.
Yes, sir.
For anybody who'd like to take notes. So good evening again. I'm back to talk about the Ethics Act and the Code of Ethics. The law says that boards of education are supposed to discuss the School Ethics Act annually at a meeting, and so this will fulfill our legal requirements. In New Jersey, as you all know, board members are subject to a School Ethics Act. It's the law in the state of New Jersey that governs the conduct of board members from an ethical point of view. And in the preamble to the Ethics Act, it says that in our representative form of government, it's essential that members of local boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people. School officials must avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates some justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. And I always tell board members what that means is that not only do board members have to avoid actual conflicts of interest, but you have to avoid what I like to refer to as the appearance of impropriety as well. If something doesn't pass the smell test, if somebody's going to question your motives, either from a personal point of view or a financial point of view on a particular course of action, it's best that you take a step back. It's best that you abstain and not involve yourself so that nobody can accuse you of being interested in something other than what is in the best interest of this school district. So who does the School Ethics Act apply to? School Ethics Act applies to board members, of course, and it also applies to employees or officers of the New Jersey School Boards Association and high-level administrators within a school district, including the superintendent, business administrator, and principals. So some folks only think that the School Ethics Act applies to board members. It does go a little bit above and beyond that as well. Now, within the Ethics Act, we have the Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics only applies to the conduct of Board of Education members. So if you look at the School Ethics Act, it's essentially divided into two parts. You have Section 1, which I like to refer to as the prohibited acts, and these deal with conflict of interest situations. And some examples that I cite here in the PowerPoint are that no board member shall act in his official capacity where he, a member of his immediate family, or a business organization in which he has an interest, has a direct or indirect financial involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of of judgment. So this situation deals with conflict of interest where a board member may be motivated by a financial interest, either a direct financial or an indirect financial interest for him or herself, or for a business organization which he or she is affiliated with, or for some immediate family member. So avoid those situations. The next section is similar. It says that no board member shall act in his official capacity where he, a member of his immediate family, has a personal involvement that is or creates some benefit to the school official or member of his immediate family. I was reading a case recently involving a personal involvement. A lot of people ask me, Mark, what does it mean by a personal involvement? Financial is pretty self-explanatory, but what is a personal involvement? This case involved a deacon who happened to be a Board of Education member, and there was a lease presented to the Board of Education between the board and his church. And he voted on it, and somebody found that he had violated this provision, and the School Ethics Act, in fact, held that he, although not financially interested in the lease, had a personal involvement, and he should have abstained from that particular course of action. So that's an example of a personal involvement. So let's talk about the relevant code provisions, and I don't mean to suggest that they're not all relevant. I have handed out copies here for all of the board members, and let's just talk about them briefly here. The first provision that I cite is Section D, which says, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. So board members are not administrators. You hired Ms. Jewett and Ms. Scheiderman and Mr. Stiles to administer the day-to-day happenings of the school district. Board members should not be involved in the day-to-day happenings of the district. Board members should not be giving orders to school staff members. Board members should really not be floating around the hallways of the high school. That's, again, administrative in nature. So if board members are not administrators, what is the role of the board member? So we turn to Section C, which says that board members are to confine their action to policy making, setting policy for the school district, planning for the future of the district, through goal setting, through discussion at a duly convened meeting and through your committees, and appraisal, taking a step back. You obviously get to evaluate your superintendent, evaluate your administrative staff, and saying, look, how are we doing? How are we doing in terms of what we have set as goals for this school district? So those are the main functions of a Board of Education member. Section E says that you will recognize that your authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises or take private action that may compromise the board. And it's not enough that it's enough of a violation that it has the potential to compromise the board. You have to remember that you only have authority to act when you're sitting here at a duly convened meeting. You shouldn't be making promises to members of the community about what the board is going to do or what it's not going to do. You shouldn't be taking your own investigations into matters involving the school district and those sorts of things. Again, that's a violation of Section E. Section G deals with confidentiality. So as you know, as board members, you're going to come across and do come across a lot of confidential information in the course of your dealings on the Board of Education, whether we're talking about confidential personnel issues, confidential student matters, matters of attorney-client privilege, litigation, and so forth. The code says that you have to keep those things confidential. And I always tell boards that when the board doesn't feel confident that what is discussed in closed session stays in closed session, it completely undermines the ability of the board to function as a board. Your family members are not bound by the Code of Ethics. They're not bound by the Ethics Act. You're bound by the Ethics Act. And nothing's worse than having a discussion that you think is private, and within a half an hour after the meeting ended, everybody in the community knows what you talked about. People aren't going to want to have discussions if those things get out. So I can't stress enough how important the confidentiality provision is of the Code of Ethics. The second part of that says that you will also convey accurate information to the community. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. You have a right to express your opinions on issues, but it's important that when you speak about issues pertaining to the district, that it's accurate, that it's correct, that it's truthful. Providing inaccurate information is a violation. Next section, I will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Does this mean you have to rubber stamp your administrator's decisions? No, it does not. Does it mean you can't ask good questions at a board meeting? No, it does not. But it means you're not supposed to evaluate your administrators in public. You're not supposed to publicly criticize your administrators. You have to act in a respectful way. Section J, which I like to refer to the section that allows a board member to punt. And what do I mean by that? So if you're at the local supermarket and somebody comes up to you and complains about their child's teacher and says, "Mr. Fahey, I want you to resolve this problem for me," the answer is, "Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'm going to refer to Ms. Jewett, and I'm sure she'll get back to you in a timely manner and address your complaint." You're supposed to refer the complaint to the chief school administrator, and you will only act on those complaints at a public meeting after the failure of an administrative solution. So again, you get a complaint, you can certainly reference to the person who's bringing the complaint, chain of command. Have you spoken to the teacher? Have you spoken to the principal? But if not, then you would obviously refer to the chief school administrator. Free speech issues. Like I said before, you do have free speech issues. There's free speech rights, I should say, as Board of Education members, but you can't disclose information which is inaccurate, confidential, or which has the potential to compromise the Board of Education. Now, there's been lots of opinions on the second bullet point here, which is that a Board of Education should not represent his personal opinion as the position of the board, and you have to include in all formal expressions, whether we're talking about letters to the editor, or Facebook postings, or Twitter, or whatever you're doing these days, that your opinion is your own individual opinion and that it does not necessarily reflect the opinion of the Board of Education, because whether you like it or not, you are known in the community as a member of this Board of Education, and you can't hold yourself out as speaking on behalf of the Board of Education. So who can file a complaint if somebody believes that somebody's violated the Ethics Act or the Code of Ethics? The answer is anybody can file a complaint, but there is a 6-month statute of limitations, which means the complaint has to be filed within 6 months of the time that the person knew or should have known about the violation. In New Jersey, we have the School Ethics Commission. They are part of the Department of Education, and they are the entity that decides whether somebody's conduct violated the Ethics Act or not. They're the only entity, so we can't decide as a board that somebody was unethical. Only the School Ethics Commission can make that determination. A school official could certainly ask for an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission, so if you have a question about a particular course of conduct, you're not sure about it, you can write to the Ethics Commission and ask for their opinion. The only thing is, if you ask for it, you're bound to follow it. I recommend that you perhaps reach out to the board attorney through the board president if you have a question about a particular course of action, and I'm certainly happy to weigh in. My decision is not the end-all and be-all, but I'm familiar enough with these decisions that I can certainly give you my opinion. I think sometimes when you read some of these advisory opinions, the School Ethics Commission oftentimes takes a very conservative, restrictive approach on some of these things. So again, be careful what you ask for. Okay. Sanctions for violations of the Act. If somebody has violated one of these provisions, what are the sanctions? So at the lightest end, you have a reprimand, which is usually a letter from the School Ethics Commission saying, no, you violated this section, don't do it again. A censure, which is a public resolution read at a board meeting, very embarrassing. Next provision is a suspension, which is removal from the Board of Education for a set period of time. And then finally, in the most extreme cases, removal. So do you think you can file an ethics complaint against somebody who's no longer on the Board of Education? What do you think about that?
No.
Would you say, Barry, I'm sorry?
No.
No. Anybody think yes? The answer is, as long as it's within that 6-month statute of limitations, you can, but obviously suspension or removal are not going to be an option for that person anymore. Okay, so I'm going to go around the room. I always like to keep these discussions interactive, and Ms. Barone has she's giving me a nice look here, because you're first. All right, first one. These are real cases, the hottest and latest from the School Ethics Commission. A board president violated Section D and J of the Code of Ethics. This is a true-false question, by the way. A board president violated Section D and J. D says you're not going to administer the school, and J says you're going to refer complaints to the chief school administrator by failing to act on a fellow board member's complaint about the superintendent's handling of a student matter, but instead the board president referred the complaint to the superintendent for his response, and the fellow board member was upset that the board member didn't investigated, the board president, I should say, didn't investigate it himself and instead said, hey, superintendent, it's alleged that you didn't handle this properly. I'd like to hear your point of view and report back to the board. That's what the board president did. Do you think this was a violation or not?
No.
Correct. It was not a violation. Question 2, Mr. Collins. 2 board members violated Section I of the Code by accusing a school employee and the superintendent of criminal conduct at a public meeting without any evidence to support their claims. Is that a problem, Mr. Collins? Yes, that is a big problem. We shouldn't accuse our superintendent of being a criminal in public.
And this only applies to school board members.
Correct. Number 3, Mr. Martins.
I'll check that off.
A board member whose sister is a teacher in a neighboring district and a member of the NJEA may participate in negotiations with the Teachers Association in the district where she is a board member. Parenthetical, the sister was not a member of the negotiation team in the neighboring district and did not hold a leadership position in the union. So was it permissible for the board member to participate in negotiations?
I'm going to say false.
The answer is actually true, and the parenthetical there is important. So if I had given this presentation last year, the answer, you're correct, would have been false, but the Ethics Commission changes its mind on issues, and they did on this particular one. They basically said that the question comes down to whether the board member's relative is on the negotiation team, holds a leadership role, is the other district perhaps in the middle of negotiations and this person is an active member of the team. Those are the questions. If the answer to those questions is no, then it is actually permissible. Yes?
But
That just changed.
it was my understanding that you could be on the negotiations committee as long as you did not vote on that, on your agreement.
No. What you might be thinking of is immediate family members. So if you have an immediate family, this by the way is relatives, if you have an immediate family member in a neighboring district, the law says that you're not allowed to be involved in the process until there's a memorandum of agreement with salary guides, at which point you can vote. So that's maybe the decision
So
you
that
were...
hasn't changed. It's
That is
just
still the
other
same.
relatives.
It's just the other relative.
Correct, exactly.
That actually happened to me, where I have two sisters who are in districts, not in leadership positions, and I was gonna be on the negotiations in Long Hill, and then I had to leave because the thing came,
Oh, really?
the opinion came out, and then after we negotiated everything, then the opinion changed. I was like, hey.
They like to change their mind from time to time. Sometimes I think they don't realize the implications of their decisions. Mr. Batista, board members should not conduct interviews for staff members. The answer is true, so that is correct. So the Ethics Commission held that board members should not be conducting the interviews for staff members. The Ethics Commission held that if a Board of Education wants to have a personnel committee, that's permissible. Board members should really only, they said, sit in on interviews or be involved directly in the interviews for high-level administrators like the superintendent. But if they're going to be involved in other interviews, and I'm reading from the decision, it says the board members may not conduct the interview, but may offer observations and assessments with full knowledge that the final recommendations are wholly within the purview of the superintendent of schools. Okay. I'm going to keep going, Mr. Morrison, and then maybe I can go back to the administrators. A board member would violate the act by volunteering for the marching band to build props and repair equipment, load and unload instruments on the trucks, and move equipment during football games and competitions. Is this okay, Mr. Morrison?
Well, if it was a year ago, it would not be okay, but it's okay now.
Correct. And the parenthetical there, again, is important because it said, look, the linchpin of these cases is how much interaction is the board member going to have with staff. If the board member is going to be giving direct orders to staff members and casting for the play was one example, then it's too much. But in a situation like this, hauling equipment, not a big deal.
See, Mark, you can use the same questions year after year, because even if we circle the answers, they might not be correct.
Exactly. They do change, exactly. Dr. Shabilsky, a board member with a relative in the same district in which he or she is a board member may not participate in negotiations with the relative's labor union.
I would think the answer is true, but relative is not specified, so I don't know if immediate relative versus
Yeah.
10th cousin first removed makes a
Right.
difference.
Yeah, I don't know that it does, and they say that as long as it's the same district, it's a problem, and they haven't talked about how far out relative goes, so you're right, maybe if it's your 15th cousin, it would be permissible, but generally, if you have a relative who's somewhat connected to you, I would say you should not do it. Mr. Mizio, a board member may endorse candidates for the Board of Education so long as the endorsement is clearly made as a private citizen. So can you say, hey, I endorse the following slate for the board in November. These people are great people and I think they'd be an asset to the board. Is that permissible as a board member?
Well, it's like a letter to the editor, or I think they.
Yeah, a
can
letter to the
endorse, but
editor.
You have to still identify yourself as a board member. You can't endorse, but identify yourself.
Correct. That's exactly correct. You can do it as a private citizen, but you have to make it clear that you're speaking as a citizen and not on behalf of the board.
Right.
Right. Mr. Hunsinger, number 8, a board member violated Section E of the code when he unilaterally prepared and served a rice notice on the business administrator without the authority of the board or the superintendent. So Tim got a rice notice from a board member, and that wasn't Tim, of course. So do you think that is a problem? And Section E is that you recognize that your authority rests with the Board of Education.
It is a problem.
It is a problem. So the superintendent certainly can issue rice notices, and the board as a whole can say that they want somebody riced. The board president can rice the superintendent, but board members should not be serving staff members with rice notices. That's a problem. Mr. Fahey, number 9, an email discussion of a board-related matter by 5 members of a 10-member board may constitute a meeting under the Sunshine Law, which would have to be advertised.
I would say true, but I don't know if it starts at half or more than half.
You honed in on the correct issue. This was a little bit of a trick question. I think the answer would be true if I said in the slide 6 members of a 10-member board, because that would be a quorum. But 5 members is not a quorum, and therefore it's like a committee, basically, and it would be okay as long as the other board members weren't brought into the fold. But when you have a majority of a board talking about board business by email, an argument could be made that that would be a meeting that would have to be advertised. So, Ms. Scheiderman. A board member who has a business which supplies $3,000 to $5,000 worth of merchandise a year to the board on an as-needed basis without a formal contract in place cannot ethically continue this business relationship with the board. So this particular board member had a medical supply business, and when they needed supplies, he would supply them through his company to the Board of Education, and somebody requested an advisory opinion about the ethics of that. Do you think that's a problem?
I wish they wouldn't, and I don't think anybody here would.
Okay.
Did he get paid for them?
That's my question.
Yeah.
Is this a gift, or is this?
This was a for-business, for-profit, yeah. So you think it's true that the board member should not continue?
Yes.
Okay, you're right. They said it's a problem.
What if it's the bid, though, Mark?
I'm sorry,
What
Tim?
if after this first year, right, then the district does a bid, formal bid, and the board member has the business, and they bid on, they bid on that particular bid.
Yeah. I still think it would be a problem. Why there's a separate section outside the School Ethics Act that says no board member shall have a contract with the Board of Education. So putting aside all the ethics, I think that would implicate another section of the 18A, which would be a problem, so.
It's interesting because the public bid law, I mean, if it's a low bid.
Yeah, no, I hear your point, though.
Yeah.
If you're the lowest bidder and it's a fair contract, but again, there's a constraint about board members having contracts with the board. Ms. Jewett, a board member whose ex-spouse is employed by the district may continue to have conflicts of interest with respect to issues pertaining to his ex-spouse's employment. So the question that came up in this advisory is a board member had, his wife was a secretary in the district, and they got divorced. And the question was, now that we're divorced, are all these constraints on immediate family members still applicable to me? And so do you think it's still a problem?
I would say yes. I would think it should be, and I would think the law would say like current or former.
Well, the answer is you're right, it is true. And they said that, look, there's a lot of variables here. What if the board member is paying child support or alimony? Just because they're divorced doesn't mean that there still isn't some connection between the two of them. I'm sorry, Tim, you didn't get a question. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Any questions? No, we're good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. We will now move into our committee reports. First report is Education Committee, Mrs. DiMizio.
The Education Committee met on March 1st. The Director of Guidance presented us with a guideline for reimbursement for online courses. Some courses, for example, some world language courses will only be offered online, and we have been paying for it, but our new policy, first of all, this is a draft guideline. We would like the students to pay first, and then if the student successfully completes the course, they will be reimbursed. And at first, they would get permission from World Language Supervisor and the Director of Guidance to take the course, and they would approve the vendor of the course. The course will appear on the transcript, but they'll get credit for the course, but the grade will only be pass-fail, and it will not be calculated in the student's GPA. And again, this is just a draft. Mary Ellen Phelan discussed the promotional activities for the spring musical, which is Beauty and the Beast. The staff working on the play has gotten together students from different departments to figure out a way to reach out to the community to advertise the play. And one idea is to hold a breakfast, a character breakfast, so targeted to young children before the Saturday matinee. And the students will come up with the menu. I assume they'll be the characters. There'll be a photo booth, and the students who are good with technology will develop an online registration system. Okay. We discussed park. The principal will be communicating with the school community about park shortly. There is no opt-out for park. All students are expected to sit and take the exam. It will be a graduation requirement for our current freshmen. And if the student is in school, the educational activity of the day will be taking the exam. And I think it's important, we do believe it's important for the students to sit for various reasons, to sit and actually do as good a job as they can. It does affect the school's reputation, it affects the school's report card, which is sent to colleges. So it does reflect on the students and their ability to get into certain schools. And we discussed the scheduling for 2017, 2018. It's an electronic process right now. And one thing that the system does do is, if the prerequisites are there for the, if the student does not have the prerequisites, they can't register. And also, the English department will be introducing LGBT literature into the curriculum. For the 9th and 10th graders, they'll start with short fiction, and by 11th and 12th grade, they will be reading longer books. And also, we discussed the policies, which everyone should have a copy of, and I think it's on tonight for first reading. And so these policies, they concern Americans with Disabilities, 504, educational stability for children in foster care. If anyone has questions, they could ask me when this comes up for a vote later in the meeting. And I think that was it. Does anyone have any questions about the Education Committee meeting?
Just a quick question, and I'm not familiar with this, and I don't know if you are or not. When you do promotional activities for the musical, I assume that there's some license fee that you have to pay for in order to be able to do it. Are there any limitations on how you advertise it, how you earn money on it, or once you pay the fee, you can do whatever you want?
I have no idea.
I just don't want to run afoul of some limits that we may or may not be aware of.
That's a great question
Yeah.
that I don't have the specific answers to. However, I do have to give credit, a tremendous amount of credit to the business teacher. It's Ms. Krutz, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Diane Krutz, who is overseeing this with the students, because she is utilizing, what's really nice is our computer science class was involved with developing an online platform. She's been utilizing her business classes and the students in there to use this as an authentic experience to teach them about marketing. So, and in working with Script and Q, because they have been doing this for years, I don't like to assume things, but as they make posters and do these kinds of promotional activity, not to this extent, but have done these things in other years, I believe that the licensing fee we pay for with the play allows us to reproduce things, but I can follow up on that and get specific answers to that to share with the board.
Is that
Any
it?
other questions?
And then also, I'd just like to report that,
Oh, yes.
yeah, Mr. Education Council met, so Mr. Morrison and I met with members of the faculty pursuant to the contract. It is a requirement that we do meet a few times a year. And we discussed not giving homework during breaks. As many of you are aware, the teachers were requested not to give homework over winter break, and we're requesting that that be the case with the spring break. And did you want to report?
We're going to be finalizing it at the faculty meeting tomorrow with the staff, but it's come out of a lot of discussions. We did it for the winter break as a trial, and the only caveat with spring break is because it is close to AP testing. Actually, the students and the teachers in the AP courses not getting homework over break has actually given them some anxiety because they like to get the review. So we're going to allow it to be optional for the AP teachers to give students a review that they feel is necessary over break. But nothing that's, if they are going to give an assignment, they'll be discussing it with their supervisor just to make sure that it's reasonable and not overwhelming for the students. So.
And I think the feedback that we got from the teachers was that after we did it for the winter break, when the students came back from winter break, they were ready to go. Whereas before, oftentimes they would come back from break and be tired or, not ready to jump back in and start with their studies. They said they came back from break and they hit the ground running right away. So they noticed the difference in the students as a result of that policy over this past break, so.
We just discussed the field trip policy, technology, the new website and the provider for that service. And we discussed revising the club approval process, because there were just some questions about what it is, how long it takes. So we discussed revising that, and that's it.
One note on the website provider, I believe that's on tonight's agenda as well, Tim? Yes, I apologize, that's why I say I believe, because I get confused when I'm looking at it, what's a preview item versus what's an action item. But that's on tonight, and, we have been discussing that with the staff, and we'll continue to once we finalize the new provider.
All right, Mr. Collins, operations.
Sure. Operations, Mr. Stiles reported that the Baseball Booster Club has offered a generous donation to repair specific areas of our varsity field. And our Director of Operations and our architect, Mr. Fiore, are analyzing what needs to be done there, and we'll have some reports back as soon as we know that, but we'll get underway with that as soon as feasibly possible. Foods Lab, we had a long discussion about that. As all of you, I hope, remember, that room is online temporarily. We've sort of gotten a stay from the construction officer in Warren, but that will need to be redone. And so it's going to be obviously part of our discussion on the budget as well, the cost of that. And so I'll defer that to our budget discussion later. And I don't think I need to report on the budget discussion since we're going to have a budget discussion tonight. Watchung housing development. Just kind of keeping the community, informed about what impacts any large housing developments and affordable housing may have and what impact it would have on our district. So if we know more and learn more, we'll continue to report that back to the board.
Any questions for Mr. Collins?
Chris, can you just elaborate on the donation? Is it a complete donation? Is it a?
It's a dollar donation based on some specific areas that need to be done. So I don't know that we have a specific amount yet. I think after we see the scope of the work that needs to be done, Mr. Size would go back to the club and say, this is what it's gonna take to do it. Is this something you can handle, or how will we handle it at that point? So we're gonna have some back and forth still.
So there's a possibility of the school contributing to the repairs?
That would be.
Yeah, it all depends. I mean, first of all, we're contributing staff, for sure. That's one thing we were talking about with our baseball folks. And then, the dollar amount just depends on where it is. But
That's what we need, some engineering and architectural work, done for all of that.
Any other questions for Mr. Collins? All right. Seeing none, that will bring us to the first opportunity for public comment. The first public comment period will be limited to agenda items for this meeting only. The second public comment period will be open to any topic. All comments are limited to 5 minutes. So, anyone have a comment for the first public comment period? Yes? Well, I heard it,
We just discussed it.
we just
so-
discussed it, so I think it's fair game. Just give us your name and town.
I'm going to pick up Mr. Martin's name.
Thank you.
So you do have to stay.
Thank you, they gotta stay now.
My name is Chuck Resinello, and I am the president of the Diamond Club. And tonight, I'm here representing 58 student athletes. The Diamond Club has a history of raising funds to supplement the funds that are provided by the school. They provide a lot of athletic wear. They bought cages, they bought screens in the past. This year, we decided to be a little bit more ambitious and look at the field's playability. So the first thing we did is we engaged a company that we did some research on, which was Certified Sports Field Consultants. They provided us 2 proposals. One was with the field consultants doing all the work. The second was with the help of the building and grounds people. We met with Roland. We presented the proposal. He provided it to Tim. Tim, it was vetted through the architect, and that is where we are right now. The Diamond Club is in a little bit of a tough situation because the baseball season is about to start. So we recognize that in order to get this done, it was not in the school budget because it's coming in after the budget period. So collectively, the members of the organization have agreed to put in money up front, which will provide, I think a substantial amount of the budget for the project, but we're really asking for a little bit of participation from the school as well. So I think, is it okay to talk numbers, Tim? Roughly?
You got the floor.
Okay. The proposal without the labor being provided by the school was $22,400. With the school providing the labor, it came down to $15,950. With the contributing members of the Diamond Club, I think our upfront contribution is about $10,900. Not that we wouldn't be able to provide all of it, but we'd prefer to have the school have a little bit of skin in the game. The time frame that we're up against is the contractor only has an available time slot of getting this done for the week of March 20th through the 27th. Those are the dates. Roland requested that, the gentleman's name is Scott Bill from the architecture, and meet with the architect from the school tomorrow to discuss some of the concerns. I think there was a concern about putting a turf around the lip of the field, whether or not would it affect the playability of the field. Short of that, what's really happening to the field is the mound is really unsafe because it doesn't have the proper landing platform. There's approximately a 6-inch ridge behind third base. The field, instead of being a 95 feet diameter, it's approximately 115 feet. So all of these things really affect the safety and the playability of the field. And I know the board gets tired of hearing about safety issues, but this truly are the 3 most pressing issues to get the field in the playing condition. So that's really where we're at. And tomorrow I will arrange to have the Scott Bill meet with the architect to hopefully finalize the few remaining items that he has concerns about. But we're really looking to move forward in having the project done prior to the season started. And the baseball coaches agreed to stay off the field for a period of time. The project will, I think, take 3 days to complete. That's all it's needed. So I appreciate your consideration for this, and thank you very much for the time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments at this particular point? Yes, yes, sir. Please come forward, state your name and town.
Hi, my name is Ashel Javeri. I'm from Long Hill Township. I'm a junior here at Watchung Hills. I know Ms. DeMizio mentioned the homework-free breaks, and as a student, I just wanted to reaffirm my strong support for that. As president of the class of 2018, I serve on the Principals Advisory Committee, so I meet with Mr. Alexis monthly to discuss some of the issues that students have. And one thing we talked about were these homework-free breaks. And I know, like, just talking with my friends and classmates and peers, they enjoyed, like, they were able to catch up on a lot of work that they may have missed up on and done some actual extra readings or extra practice during winter break at least. And then looking ahead to spring break, I know personally I'm taking a couple of AP classes, so having that extra time to review for the upcoming tests, which would be in May. I know my history teacher has already, given us some review materials to look over, and so having that free of actual, like, assignments that are due once we get back, but instead having that time to focus on reviewing for the test in May is very helpful. And so just wanted to express my belief that, or hope that this policy would continue, not just for this break, but in upcoming breaks as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Any other comments for this particular comment period? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the board discussion. The first item is discussion of the 2017-2018 preliminary school district budget, and I will turn this over to Mr. Stiles.
Bear with me. Click on File, Tim, maybe, and, yeah.
Guess not.
Nick's coming.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm just getting things. Oh, okay. That's why you need
I'm
that.
sure it's fine, but I'll verify that. No, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so we are going to give you a little preview of the 2017-18 tentative budget. Generally, what we would do is we would share the budget books with you tonight and then give this presentation on March 21st. But given the robust discussion that occurred in Operations Committee last week, the Operations Committee, along with Tim and I, thought it would be best to have the discussion this evening so that we have more time before the actual board votes on the tentative budget to submit to the county superintendent on March 21st. So the first slide is always our board members, and Tim and I and Beth always like to thank you for your continuous work and support. What I'm going to go over in the next number of slides in terms of our student accomplishments is largely in part due to the support that the school district gets from the board. And we know you all get paid so much for all of your time, so we want to make sure that we know all the time that you put in. It's not only the time at the board meetings, it's the time in between the board meetings, at committee meetings, on the phone, via email. We give you a lot of information to consume and digest and reflect on and ask questions on, so we really do appreciate your commitment and your support. So here's just a brief timeline. Tonight, as we had said, and generally in the past, we would just be giving you the budget books to look at, and we would be discussing it at the next meeting, but we've moved that up to this meeting. March 21st is when the board will actually vote on the preliminary draft budget so that we can submit it to the county office for review. April 21st is when we will officially notify the public of the hearing on the budget, which will occur at our April 25th board meeting. So we start off the presentation by just highlighting our strategic plan goals, because these are what we continually refer to whenever we are making programmatic and budgetary decisions. So obviously, our first one talks specifically about programs that we're looking to enhance the social and emotional wellness of all students within our learning community. And that has been really at the forefront of a lot of our conversations this year, the homework-free break being an example of that. The second goal is around supporting our students to help with their post-secondary planning and really getting them ready for whatever their next step is after they graduate. And then the last goal has to do with integrating creative, innovative, and interdisciplinary learning throughout our district. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure we highlight before we get into the details of the budget are our student accomplishments, because there are quite a few of them. So when we talk about the budget, it's nice to keep in mind the bigger picture of what the support of this budget has actually brought to the students of the school. So a couple just highlights of our student achievement. Our SAT average has increased quite a bit over the past couple of years, and we've gone up from being in the mid-1600s to an average of 1718 for the class of 2016. And this year, we actually also have the greatest number of national merit finalists that we have ever had. We have 10. All 10 of our semifinalists were then chosen as finalists. With regard to AP, we administered 1,002 exams in 2016 to 432 students. 94% of our students earned a score of 3 or better, and 216 students earned recognition for AP performance, including 21 national AP scholars, and that also is the most we've had for that. So now if we go on to some of our other athletic and co-curricular accomplishments, over 80% of our students participate in athletic and co-curricular activities. So the next set of accomplishments are a mixture from last year and this year. So as you can see, last year, boys golf and girls softball earned the Somerset County Championship and Group 4 State Championship titles. And this past fall, our girls soccer team also won the Somerset County Championship. And our school was also acknowledged last year by the Skyline Conference for exceptional sportsmanship among our coaches and athletes. So not only are they performing well, but they are also exhibiting good sportsmanship, and they are just wonderful student athletes. Our students gain recognition every year in all sorts of areas, in the arts, in music, in writing, in engineering, in technology, in science, and in math. And so the next couple of slides just list some of the different areas of recognition and organizations that our students have earned recognition from. We consistently have students make region and all-state orchestra, chorus, and band. We've had students perform in the Band of America Honor Band and at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in the Great American Marching Band. We had students make the All-Eastern Honor Choir. We have students every year selected to the state teen art, who go to compete at the Teen Arts Festival, the Regional Teen Arts Festival, and last year the State Teen Arts Festival selected a number of our students to move on to there. So there's a list of art shows that our students are picked, that our students' work is picked to be exhibited at. We also, we just had one of our students named as one of the top 300 students in the nation in the Regeneron Science Talent Search. Daniel Lee, he also actually plays on our hockey team, who played in the state finals on Sunday evening. We have students who compete in the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. Our robotics team made it to the World Championships last year, made it all the way to the quarterfinals. Our school newspaper, our FBLA, JSA, they all gain continuous recognition. And again, all of these things would not be possible without budgetary support. Last year, we've consistently moved up in the Newsweek rankings of America's top high schools. And so last year, we were number 131, and that's across the nation. And then, of course, New Jersey Monthly, which was the most recent ranking that came out over the summer, Watchung Hills moved from number 50 to number 11. So again, you know, the rankings are not the end game. However, they are validation that we are moving in the right direction. And as Ms. DeMizio mentioned earlier, colleges look at our school profile. So it helps our students when our school is ranked high among rigorous, high-performing schools in New Jersey. And in terms of financial accomplishments, we've completed replacement of our turf field in the summer of 2016. That was a nearly $1 million project, financed with $322,000 of state funds and then $623,000 from capital reserve. So we did not have to increase the tax levy to pay for that project. We switched health plans during 15-16, saving the district $600,000 in health care costs. We refunded the 2003 and 2007 bond issues, saving taxpayers $2.8 million over the remaining life of the bonds. And we also have received over $390,000 over the last 8 years from federal E-rate programs, and we've used that to fund our technology services. So that's an average of about $48,000 per year. And now I'm going to turn over the rest of the, I think I did one slide too many. I'm going to turn over the rest of the financial stuff to Mr. Stiles. I got so excited.
Yeah, I could see.
She gets to do all the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I like to give all the good news, so now I can turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Ms. Jewett, and thank you to the board. The rationale for having an earlier discussion, usually like Liz mentioned, we give out the books now, and then on the second meeting, we do the presentation, and then there's the vote for the tentative budget. And then in April, we have the public hearing. And really, the main reason is we've had, a pretty good run. We've had 6 years of 2% tax levy increases. And then prior to that, that's when, and you'll see it in the slides coming up, that's when the wall, or the ceiling caved in on us and we lost their state aid. And so that was a 1% increase in tax levy that year. And then before that was the 4% tax levies, which I kind of went back like 10 or 11 years just to kind of show you context. But the reason we're meeting earlier, because our format now is a discussion tonight and then, the vote. So being consistent with that, since we don't have a normal, I don't want to say a normal budget, we have a budget where we're going beyond 2%. We're actually looking for 4%. So the committee felt very strongly that we really need to have a discussion tonight and just a review of the entire budget and, go over why the increases are what they are. And hopefully I can show you all the information that kind of led to where we are, so we can have a good discussion. I think that's what the purpose was. So carrying on with our financial accomplishments, nothing works for me tonight. I don't know what it is. Am I pushing the wrong buttons?
Yeah, no, you have to point it.
This way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
between Mr. Hunsinger and Mr. Fahey.
This is why I don't go near technology, like someone tells me what to do. So one of the things that, one of the other accomplishments that we don't really talk about a great deal, but it's something that we've done very, very well in the past 10 years. Our utilities, going back to 08, 09, 10, we were all around $1 million. One of the things Mr. Giuliano and his team have done, with our architect's help, of course, is to correct deficiencies in our heating and ventilating system and put in regulatory type systems that allow us to change temperature in rooms. And you can see the result here. If you go back, we were over $1 million. And the last 2 years, by the way, are estimates, which I believe will be lower than that. They're just budgetary figures right now. We don't have the actuals. The other ones, years 07, 08 through 15, 16 are actual numbers. And you could see we were over $1 million at one point, and we're down below 700,000. So again, something we don't talk about a great deal, but it's something we need to celebrate because that has been a terrific accomplishment. 2 in a row. And the drivers in the budget and the things that, and I'll kind of detail where they've moved in the past 10 years. Obviously, the strategic plan is a key component. When we start the budget, we submit the strategic plan to all of our supervisors, and when they're putting stuff into the budget, we ask them to adhere to the strategic plan and try to justify new expenditures through that process, explaining this is how it enhances the strategic plan for the district. Enrollment projections is one of the first things we do. That's back in September and October, and we start looking at them, and you'll see that those numbers are dropping. And then our resources are critical. What we're allowed to use as tax levy, what we receive as state aid, and the numbers you'll see are very interesting over a 10-year period. Tuition with our send receive Greenbrook, which is very difficult. Again, you'll see that on the slide. It is very difficult to predict for both of us. So we struggle to try to maintain an even keel on that one, and you'll see it's not always easy to do. One student, you're talking a $15,000 swing. So if we guess there's going to be 420 and there's 410, that's 10 students times 15,000. That's a big change, And then you're estimated tuition rates now based on next year's expenditures. Also very difficult to do, which makes budgeting, and that's a large number. It's about $7 million. So it's a very large number, and it's very hard to pinpoint. Our capital maintenance needs, our baseball guys who are terrific, they laid out a perfect point. That's one of the things we really struggle with. is to keep up with certain items, particularly on the grounds. It's very hard. There's many times when we've had stuff in the budget that has been cut based on what has gone on during that year. Like maybe we have more special ed costs that we didn't anticipate, maybe healthcare rose higher, so we have to shift things out. And a lot of times, unfortunately, maintenance gets hurt. Obviously, association agreements, which are settled at the moment, yeah. We have 2 more years, right? Yeah, awesome. And special ed costs, which are on the rise, and healthcare also on the rise. Our anticipated enrollment, as I mentioned, is dropping. That hurts us in a couple of ways. Number one, any cost per pupil calculation becomes that much more difficult, particularly the tuition with Greenbrook. It'll start shifting that. The formula basically is your cost divided by the number of students, and that'll start shifting that cost again. So we kind of have to prepare, both us and Greenbrook, to try to minimize the impact of that rate change that's going to occur. And the tax levy increase over the last 11 years. I pulled this out because I wanted to show that we had that, straight run of 2%. And what aided that 2% run has been 4 years of Chapter 78 increases. That Chapter 78 went from a quarter of the full amount to a half, to 3/4, then to the full amount. So that 4-year period, we had an incremental increase in health benefit.
Could you define Chapter 78, please, for?
Yeah, for those who, and it's like I start thinking like these educators. They give you, I get acronyms all day long from them, and I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, what do you mean with it? Basically, Chapter 78 is a law that was put in place with Governor Christie and the legislature back at, what started in about 2011, 10 or 11, I'm not sure which year. But what happened was, there wasn't a contribution statewide to health benefits. So Chapter 78 kind of mandated a healthcare contribution from employees, for local boards of education, really from municipalities and just about anybody who has a public position. So they literally went from nothing to up to 35% of the premium, the cost of the healthcare premium. So over a 4-year span, it was phased in. Year one, it was a quarter of the full percent, full amount, then half, then 3/4, and then full amount. So when I said there was an incremental change every year, we went from 0 to a quarter to a half, 3/4, to full. So you had really an artificial revenue, so to speak, of a fourth of what the healthcare contribution is. And I'll give you just the numbers. For this budget, 17-18, $1.3 million is what the employees are contributing toward healthcare, which is significant. And 4 of those years up there, those 2% were certainly aided by that. 2 years, the last 2 years, we switched healthcare providers from Horizon to Aetna. And we did it mid-year in 15-16, and it had a 2-year impact for us, which helped us again. And I want to call it artificial savings because it's real savings that the district, we changed healthcare, which is never an easy thing, particularly with a couple hundred employees. It's always very difficult. But we switched from Horizon to Aetna, saved $600,000, particularly over those 2 years, and it helped us balance the budget. So that kind of leaves us where we are now. Those items are no longer around, and in order to balance the budget, I'll show you some more of the figures, we had to go up to a 4%, which we are allowed. We are allowed because we have tax levy waivers. One of the waivers is a healthcare increase, and the other one is bank cap. And bank cap is something that you've accumulated over the past couple of years, primarily based on healthcare increases.
When you say allowed, you mean like
Permitted. In other words, we don't have to. without it. You do not have to go to vote. If you were to go above that, you would have to go to a separate proposal. Which is, okay. It's always tough to look at this. When you go back to 07, 08, 08, 09, and 9, 10, and this is the thing I complained about, we were getting $1.6 million in state aid. We still haven't gotten back to that. In 10, 11, we lost all of our state aid. We went down to 0. That was the catastrophic cut year. And then we slowly started getting up, and now it's flat again at just under $1 million. One thing to keep in mind, they do take out $120,000 of what they call an SDA fee. So that's a school development authority fee for old projects that we did years and years ago. But we keep getting charged that fee, and it's our portion of the state's debt occurred for those projects, which I think is silly, but it is one. So, as you can see from that list, we still haven't gotten back to where we were in 2009, 2010, which has been a problem for us.
Okay, Tim? At that same time, besides zeroing us out in 2010, 2011, how much money did the state take back from our reserves?
Let's see, I thought that was 09, it might have been 09, 10. So they took away part of it, I don't remember quite what it was, but it was 09, 10, they took away, I don't know the exact figure, but there was a,
It was north of $1 million.
yeah, it was mid-year, which made it tough, because, mid-year in I thought it was like February or March, they took away like $200,000 to $300,000. I thought it was in that range. I'm not sure. I'd have to get that figure. But they definitely took away part of that 1.6 that particular year. And how they did it, or how they justified it was, they essentially looked at our accumulated reserves, and capital reserve, tuition reserve, and said, well, you guys have the money, you can use that to balance your budget for the remainder of this year. And that's how they justified taking the 10, 11 numbers too. That was a tough way for the district. It took us a long time to come back, like I said.
Yeah, 2017-18 number, is that the actual number? Did we get the actual figure ready?
That's the actual category, categorical aid. All these numbers are categorical.
They released the last.
It does not include debt service aid. It does not include, and this year, in 17-18, one of the things I'll talk about is that we get another form of aid, extraordinary aid, based on special education tuitions that we pay and in-district costs that exceed a certain amount. And this year, I'm actually recognizing a couple $100,000 of that, which is a little bit of a gamble because you may not necessarily get it. But again, something that we were looking to do to balance the budget. Moving off our state aid, this is the Rocky Mountains, tuition revenue. I wanted to present it this way just to show how it changes every year and how difficult it is. It's not a straight line under any sense of imagination, and it's very difficult to predict, which wreaks havoc on us and Whrhs. If we had our way, we wouldn't be doing this. It is a large line, it's a $7 million line. It is so hard to predict, and if we're off, then we have this, we work together very well to try to minimize the damage from these adjustments from year to year. But it's still difficult. And you can see that graph kind of shows it perfectly. These are actual numbers, other than 17, 18, or 16, 17, which we have true. We have those are estimates, the other ones are actual. It makes it very, very difficult for us to predict where we're going to be. So, in large part, when I start the budget process, I actually start with this. Because once I have this settled, I know where, tax levy's pretty predictable, and state aid lately has been flat, so you kind of know that. This one's always tough. It makes it very challenging. On the expenditure side, the special ed tuition has been on the rise.
very difficult. It's based on IEPs. We have students here till age 21 in many cases, not all, but in particularly with your out-of-district students. It's difficult to control. We do make a lot of attempts to keep students in the district. Our special ed director spends the amount of time in court. Our attorney knows that. So it is challenging. There's no question about it. There are tuitions that are up above $100,000 a year. That doesn't include transportation costs. It does not include extra costs like therapies, one-to-one aids, those kind of things. So this is very difficult and under control. And you can see the last 2 years, we definitely have had a spike. We have gotten an increased number of students from our sending districts. That's kind of the way it goes. A couple of them are aging out this year, but it doesn't make up for the ones that are coming in, unfortunately.
We can talk about what we do to mitigate those costs. We have programs in the school, we don't have to send students outside of the district, and we take tuition students from other districts. So try to create programs like that to save money.
Yeah, we do. We have a terrific LLD program.
Yes.
And
LLD, what does that mean? Language or
I knew you were gonna say that.
Not language and learning.
And I mean, there's other things we do in this district for our special ed program. And I got to tell you, this is a story that because I run into the kids all the time. We have a midday program, which is one of the best things I've seen in a special ed program. They take the kids, around the neighborhood, and they teach them things like shopping. And I happen to run. I was at the bank for whatever reason. Last year something like that, I'm sure. But so I was at the bank, and the kids were there with the teacher, the midday program, and they're working the Mac machine. And the kids, like they always do, hello. They hold the door for me. They all shake. They're like the sweetest kids. They're so nice and so appreciative. It is a wonderful program. If you ever see them around town, you'll know what I mean because they'll always say hello. They'll hold the door for you. I mean, they're just the nicest kids. So, just a side note, that's a tremendous program that we have here. Unfortunately, on the downside, there is a cost to all of that. And that's something that is difficult to control. With those cap numbers, it's becoming more and more of a challenge. And tied to the special ed is the transportation costs and things like that that go with the picture.
So over the past 2 years, our special ed costs have increased by 40%, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. We went from about $1.6 million, we're up to about 2.2 in out-of-district tuition. But there are also other costs that have gone up. Our one-to-one aids have gone up. Our services have gone up, speech, therapies. That's been from a cost standpoint. Healthcare, and this is a pretty good graphic because it does show you 4 years of where it kind of leveled off, and then those Chapter 78 incremental changes are now flattened out, and you can see the rises. We're heading up again. This particular year, it's 11% increase. And with a 2% budget cap, that's difficult. That's $500,000. Some of the things I just want to highlight is there are still things within this budget. So we are doing some upgrading of wireless networks to include remote areas. That's our sports complexes. We're doing this primarily for security purposes. And we do get, and Liz mentioned it before, we put in for E-rate every year. And we average about 50,000 a year. Last year we got about 120 because now there's a category 2 for these type of projects. So this type of project gets you 40% back in the dollar, which the district has done a great job of, looking for those extra dollars, E-rate, debt service, those kind of things. We're also looking, we had a lot of debate on this one in operations. We were talking about adding Chromebooks on a one-to-one platform. So there's a cost of 500 Chromebooks and also 130 teacher laptops. And that's just to replace old and failing laptops for the remainder of our teachers. Talking to our IT director, that's number one on his list. The frustration of the teachers when the laptops, you're in class and that laptop's not working, or the laptop freezes. They're old and they definitely need to be replaced. We replaced about 70 this year, and we're looking to replace 130 next year. So that's a key thing that we want to keep in this budget at all costs if we can.
And the laptop, it's not just for their personal use, it's their interface in the classroom. There's not desktops in the classroom anymore. Their laptops, what they use to control the smart software, the smart board, the projector. So that's what they use to facilitate their classes.
What's the approximate price of each Chromebook?
The Chromebooks were, I know they were around $1,200, John. We had our generous.
I think it's like $330.
The Chromebooks or I'm sorry, the Chromebooks or the teacher laptops? The Chromebooks were about $300.
Teacher laptops are about,
Yeah. Yeah, because
so they can't run the smart board.
Yeah, we are looking to add 12 smart boards. We originally started out with more, but the cost of them is $6,000 for smart boards, so we had to cut back. We had to cut. If there was something we knew we could cut back, that was something we thought we could. We have 60 already, which are being used quite well, but the cost of them was a little bit tough to kind of continue with that thing. One of the special ed programs that we're looking to add is the ARC Transitional Pilot Program. It provides our special ed students with educational transition for post-secondary schools. It's about $12,000, but it's a terrific program. We're looking to start that next school year. And our continuing commitment to improve our major building items, the HVAC, the exterior. We always feel we can control our utility costs even more. That's been a goal of ours for a long time, and we're going to continue with that. For two reasons, really. Number one, trying to control the dollars, but we also want to be, we're also in sustainable in New Jersey, so we're trying to help our carbon footprint. Okay, and then our overall operating expenditures. Salary and benefits combined is about a 4% increase. It's a 2.6% with the teacher's salary. That was our negotiated rate. And health benefits are about 11. So the average comes out to about 4% overall. That's over $1 million. That line alone. So a $580,000 cap. It's hard to cover that with just that number there. Our operations budget is down, but keep in mind that the board approved a maintenance reserve deposit in this school year of $260,000. So if you take that out of 16-17, then you got about an even look there. So it's not as bad as it looks on that screen. It's a little bit deceiving because we did add that money this year. I had to tell Roland that about 3 times. Roland, we didn't cut the budget, I promise. Sorry. So our instruction supplies, that line is up 7%, a little bit under 8%, mainly because what we did was with all those equipment items, we included a lease purchase agreement in there. So that's a 5-year lease purchase. We had to take that out of the equipment line because quite frankly, we couldn't pay for it outright in 1 year. And it's instructional supplies, books, and other, I didn't have them together. But, the lease purchase is about $128,000, and that one, non-instructional supplies, we actually did reduce a bit to get down, not a huge number. Transportation, we are cutting. One of the things that we've done, and I didn't mention it in the highlights, but the past couple of years, we're trying more and more to work with our sendings to consolidate routes. We did a nice job this year with Long Hill, and we're planning to do more with Long Hill and Watchung. Still working on Warren, still working on them, but those two districts alone, when we can triple tier a route, meaning you start at high school, middle school, or elementary, which I don't know, elementary or middle school, whichever order it is. But when you triple tier, it's more efficient and it's more cost effective, and it's cheaper for both parties. And that's really our goal. We're trying to eliminate any single routes. If we can eliminate double routes, terrific. And get into those triple routes, those triple tiers, those are the best. And that's the goal of next year. We feel confident that we are going to lower that budget number. Special ed tuition, we already mentioned, that's up just around 11%. And our capital outlay cost looks much larger than it is. Most of that is funded through capital reserve withdrawals. So we're withdrawing about $1 million, almost $1.5 million. And two of those projects, just to get into a little bit of detail, have to do with prior year's referendums. One of them is and I think Luz mentioned it, we're using $620,000 from our capital reserve to help fund the turf field that was replaced. That, coupled with the debt service aid of 320, pays for the entire field, no increase in the tax bill. And that was what we put forth to the public, and that is what we did. We could deliver. The other piece of that is our 2013 referendum, and it's the South Kitchen project. We are looking to supplement that project, the final phase of that, with $700,000 in capital reserve. The law allows you to do that through the budget process. We have to advertise that and let folks know that we're doing that. Again, it does not add to the tax levy. It's just taking out of our reserve for that South Kitchen project. And it will be complete with the 2013 referendum after that. And just a usual graph. Salary and benefits are most of the budget. So when we're looking to cut significant costs, that's really where we have to look. These other things, they're minor items in terms of the whole dollars of the budget. So it's very difficult to cut major things from supplies, operations. And really you don't want to cut too much into your operations because then you don't get any of your maintenance. Like we just did all of this work, added roofs, steam heat system. So you really want to maintain those things as best you can so you don't get into that constant replacement of things as it fails too soon. You want them to last as long as possible. Just like you do at home. On the revenue side, this is something that we talked about at length. We are using a large part of our surplus. Capital reserve is about $1.5 million. We're using $150,000 tuition reserve to offset the changes from our Greenberg tuition adjustment. And we also have some excess surplus which is generated from the audit. We average about $500,000 a year in that category. I usually add about 100 or 2, depending on where the budget software calculates it. So all told, it's $2,384,000. The tuition, as I mentioned before, is up 4.23%. We worked this through with Greenberg. Our miscellaneous revenues are up. We're recognizing more of our rentals, and that's something that I'm going to have to spend some time with the operations committee and the board to show. We do make significant dollars with our rentals, particularly with our PAC. And we have some steady rentals here. We have the Murray Hill Tiny School. We have the Athletic Volleyball Club. But we also do a lot of work with the PAC. The PAC we have rented out all the time. And we are getting revenues that do help us out. also rented out. We don't make as much there, but they are rented out, and we are collecting funds on them. And then the state aid, the thing I talked about before, the categorical aid was flat, 192. But what we're recognizing is $200,000 of extraordinary aid, which we have been getting every year. Last year, for example, it was $395,000. I'm recognizing 200, that is not a sure thing. The state can cut that. We usually are notified in July, just to give you an idea. That's what we're told. Okay, you got extraordinary aid. And it's usually the first 2 weeks of July. I know I'm always on vacation checking my email. My wife says, "Well, you put that thing down, we're on vacation." Extraordinary aid. We did. So we are recognizing half of that. And one of the questions that did come up in our operations team, what happens if you don't get it? Well, if we don't get it, we're going to have to cut something midstream in order to make up for that lost revenue. And that goes for any revenue. If you lose a revenue line, you're going to have to cut something to make up for that revenue. Because if you don't, it's simple balancing budget, like our federal government does, they balance budgets. But if you don't have a revenue source, you have to make it up with a shortfall in expenditure. And our tax levy, as we mentioned, is at 4%. The budget cap, which is in the booklet, it's the first tab in your booklet, it calculates how we came up with 4%. 2% is the standard. And then we allowed a healthcare waiver of about $279,000. And we actually had about $500,000 of bank cap from previous years. I'm using $300,000 of that and deferring $258,000 for that following. The overall increase in operating revenues and expenses, this is the operating account, 5.9%. And most of our budget, as I always say, is tax levy. Tuition is a large piece of that, but as Bruce will testify, that's part of his tax levy in Greenbrook. So, a large part of our budget is based on state formula is from local tax levy. The state aid formula is based on ability to pay, and that's why we don't get the aid that other districts, some of the other districts in the state get. Our district is a high district. When you look at the letters, this is an old system. We went from A to J. J being the most affluent, and since we're in that category, we get less state aid. That's one of the things you've heard on the local radio stations. We're talking about what the state is per pupil. If you just do the math, ours is about $450, $500 in that range. So we get about $500 of state aid per pupil, whereas other districts get about $15,000. Some of your out-of-type districts, just to give you an idea. That was a popular topic lately, and that was something the governor had talked about. But in his address, I believe he mentioned that he kind of talked it on to the legislature, saying, "Well, you guys can come up with 100 days, come up with a formula that works better, a fair formula," he called it. But I don't know what to tell you. Don't hold your breath. On a comparison basis, and these are districts that are similar to ours in different regions within the state. We compare pretty well. Overall cost per pupil is just a shade under $16,000, which is still a very reasonable price. And how we determine taxes in a regional district is that each year we get a different regional tax allocation. So from one year to the next, it can change based on the number of students you have, compared to the elementary students you have compared to the high school students, and the township assessments, the assessed values of the homes. So there's a formula that the state provides to us, and what it does is it splits our tax levy between the three towns. And like I said before, Greenbrook pays tuition, so they're not included in this calculation. So based on the new figures, Warren Township and Watchung Borough get a slight increase of our tax levy whereas Long Hill Township, which had an increase last year, actually drops a little bit. And that's because, you know, again, the relationship between the values of the homes and the number of students sent actually shifted just a bit to change those numbers, which is always difficult when it comes to calculating the tax impact, because it's never the same for all three towns. So usually when I talk to anyone in the towns, they would say, well, how come Watchung is paying this and we're paying this? Well, primarily because of this. This is a big component of it. It shifts the tax levy each year. And it's, you know, as you think about it, it's kind of a fair system, because what they're doing is they're basing on current changes in home values and also the number of students.
But to be clear, this is all formula driven. This is nothing that we take the numbers, we don't have control over the formula.
Mr. President, that is 100% correct. It is provided to us by the state of New Jersey. We plug into a formula and out the numbers. So yeah, so it's 100% state formula. And the tax impact for the average homes in each of the towns, and the calculation that you have there is, it goes from an average home last year to an average home this year. And I don't want to confuse folks, because your home may not be that home, it may be that home, but the value may have changed differently than what's on that list. This is a stagnant calculation based on theoretical average homes. So, you know, just before you get caught up in that, you know, just understand, you know, on our website, I will have how to calculate our portion of it for your home, but just for our purposes, on an average home in Warren Township, we're looking at an increase of $128, which is an increase in rate of 0.005. Watchung Borough, it's an actual decrease in rate, 0.005. The increase on the average home is $16. And for Long Hill Township, the increase for the average home is $93. So that's a 0.0138 increase. And this is based on the 4% tax bill. And just to be clear, this particular calculation takes half of last year, 15-16, or 16-17, and half of next year, 17-18. And it compares it between 15-16 and 16-17, half of those two calculations. So the 4% it's a piece of this year's calculation and a piece of the ensuing year's calculation. So that's kind of how that works. Fascinating stuff, right? So that's the budget presentation. I don't know how you would like to proceed with questions.
I think let's open it up for some questions to begin with. There's some specifics that we want to dig into, we certainly can. So, board members have any questions?
The debt service is, it pays off, it's for payment of bonds. How it works is we calculate the total amount of bond payments that are due, and then we offset that with the revenue source. This particular year, actually, our tax levy for the debt service actually dropped just a bit because we received the debt service aid from the state, particularly for the field payment that I talked about. And also we made use of some of our national surplus that we had in debt service. We actually, for the field, which made it look tricky in the budget booklet, it made it look a little, it was a little deceiving. It actually looked like it went up quite a bit, but that's primarily because of that field. The field cost was about $950,000. So that field cost is in debt service and they paid it in July. It's 1 year temporary note. We're going to pay it off in July, and we're paying it off using debt service aid, state aid, capital reserve, customer surplus.
And that's in the line with the principal, is that where that line is?
The principal is about $941, and I think the interest was about $4,600 that range, if I remember right. It's a one-year payment. The particular item that you're talking about, that increase for debt service, was temporary bond. The principal is the principal on the loan. So that's the actual bond for the field, the proceeds. The interest above it is about $46.45. So that kind of, let's say, artificially inflated the cost of it, because it's a true cost, but we just paid for it at debt service aid, state, and college.
Other questions?
Tim, were you looking, or has there been any clarification on the possible impact of charter schools and what that would do to your budget?
We don't currently have an impact of charter schools
Right now?
right now. I'm not aware of any.
Is there something you'd like to share with us?
No, I'm just looking, I don't know if there's been legislation on charter schools and the district's obligations if students choose or like kind of change a little bit where students all have to go to charter schools and then become responsible for that payment.
We are.
If a student goes to a charter school,
Yeah, they follow.
yeah, if a student goes to a charter school, the state aid follows it and Washington Mills would have the obligation for that. Yeah,
Regardless of where that school is.
correct.
When did that change?
If it's a student within our, if it's a student within our district.
Right.
So if it's a student who's educated and domiciled in our region, then we are responsible for that student.
Yeah, other schools are facing this now. I've talked to colleagues about this. They are facing it. It's tough because particularly when you look, some of the districts that rely more heavily on state aid than we do. That's a tough hit. When those dollars follow that student, and 50% of their revenue comes from state aid, that is a very difficult hit. But right now, I guess I'm not going to go, so I'll get that. We do not have that issue. I hope we don't.
Other questions?
The decrease in enrollment hasn't affected staffing, anything like, for this budgetary period?
Not particularly, well, last year it did, I know the temporary.
We've lost, we've tried to do it through attrition. We have decreased some teaching positions, and we're looking at it again for this year. It's impacted, we've had so many, as you know, we've approved it all on the board agenda, we've had so many maternity leaves that, we had a situation where somebody we hired in a tenure track position 2 years ago, then ended up filling a leave replacement position this year because we were down a position. So we have, for the past couple of years, we've been down a position or two each year across departments.
Other questions? All right, I have a couple. So this year we're proposing this particular budget by being able to utilize the extra cap room that we have. What's your prognostication about having, the situation a year from now? Are we going to find ourselves a year from now where we have the same type of situation and we don't have the cap? And where are we headed? Because I think the decisions that we make with this particular budget will have an impact on the budgets that we have coming down the line.
That's a terrific question. And the reason being is exactly what we kind of laid out in some of those slides. In those slides, you're seeing we had 6 years of 2%, but that 2% is very difficult to sustain on the space because it's a $580,000 increase, and if the healthcare is going to go up double digits, and our salaries are X or Y, and how do you sustain it? So It's something, you know, it's that large pie with the big sections with the salaries. If we're gonna make those kind of decisions and cuts, that's where we gotta go. We've gotta look at that area. You know, there's only so much we can cut out of like an operations or supplies. We're kind of low as it is right now with some of our supplies and some of our maintenance items as it is. So, you know, in order to make this sustainable and helpful, you know, we can certainly go after things like, you know, continuing to make our transportation more efficient, continuing to, you know, try to keep our utilities down as best we can. But at the end of the day, staffing is going to be a key issue, particularly what Ms. Barone brought up before. The enrollment continues to drop. Now, one of the things Mr. Collins brought up before, and we talked about it at committee level, there is discussion about adding housing units to that. We don't know where that's going to go. And we're going to try to work with the sending districts to figure out exactly where that rule is going to go. Because we're going to do a demographic study with all the schools, the districts here and us. So that should be an interesting play. But if the enrollment, the way it's going, it keeps dropping, we have to seriously look at positions and programs.
The other question that I have, and I don't know if the other board members have had a chance to look at the green tab under new items. I want to point out to you that even with this particular budget with the 4%, it's not like we're really, they've had some items in here that have been taken off the table as a result of our, you know, trying to manage our way to that 4% number. And they're, you know, and when we talk about that we want to invest in things that support our strategic plan, particularly as it relates to student achievement and particularly our co-curricular activities, you know, in areas where we have significant student growth and participation, we're not making those investments. You know, we continue to kick that can down the road, and at some point in time, we need to make some decisions about, you know, do we invest in our successful programs, and do we have to take a pass on programs that may be nice for us to do, but we just can't afford adding new programs right now, so we can invest in programs that are being successful. So that's, you know, kind of question number one, is how do we really address that so that we are making the right kind of investments that will support our students. The second point is there's an item in there, in one of the pages there, I think it was like about $225,000 investment for the ARC program, which is going to be to support our special services.
The ARC program is the one that's in there. That's the $12,000 program. That's the transition program. The other program is the school avoidance, school aversion program that we'd like to do for our students.
So the other thing that we have to take a look at is what other investments are out there that may actually have a return on investment for us. And while you look at certain things like that particular program that would have the opportunity to actually allow us to maintain more students here as opposed to sending them out, I think we need to do a cost-benefit analysis on, you know, what's the likelihood of that $225,000 investment actually allowing us to keep 3 or 4 or 5 more students here, which all of a sudden that adds up very quickly to a return back to the bottom line. So I know there's a penchant to want to look at the big numbers, you know, to take them off the table so that we can get to whatever number we need to get to more quickly. But I think we also have to try to be thoughtful about where are there areas, again, where investment supports, you know, our longer term goals and will actually have a return for us. So I would urge the other board members to take the opportunity to actually look in some of those areas, because again, you know, this is a proposal. We may want to take a look at, you know, how might we rejigger certain things in order to maybe make some of these other investments that in the long term are going to be more important for the district, while at the same time maybe pushing off certain things that, again, are nice to do and not necessarily good to do.
One of the things that the administration has been doing already Yes, we do know, there are a couple, we did discuss operations that we feel we could possibly, bring back. However, that won't happen until, it's not an end exchange right away, so we have to have the program in place first to then, see if that's a possibility. We have looked at that in terms of how many, and with home instruction, what the exchange would be for that.
Yeah, we even talked to sales about, trying to make that, you can kind of push that into like a mid-year type of situation where, we can try to get something in this, and it's half of the cost. Let's just try to fit it in. And we are thinking of many, that's a great example that Bob brought up, because that particular program is a part of our strategic plan. It's one of the things that we're talking about. And number two, for B, we have like So the second thing is that not only is it part of the plan, but it is something that will save us money, that could save us money if we bring a couple of students back. Like I said, we're talking about $100,000 tuition or something at some of the students. The transportation cost that you got to add on, the services that you got to throw in there. If you can bring them back in here, that's significant. That's a significant savings. So that particular program was,
We bring them back in here, obviously to a program that meets their needs.
Absolutely.
Tim, quick question on extracurricular activities. The rationale behind the number of staff members dedicated to an activity. Who makes that determination?
those are all negotiated. So everything I have on that list is something that we've negotiated with the association, except for a couple of positions that we've added over the years, based on requests for example, I think it was track coach, I know, there was a hockey coach at one point, golf coach. But by and large, they're all negotiated items.
Are you asking how many staff are assigned to the particular activity?
Yes, and who's determining that we need 3, we need 5, we need 9?
That's what it's outlined in the CBA.
It's on schedule.
Schedule F now.
F.
Yes. It used to be D.
Well, we don't know the rationale behind those decisions.
Well, in terms of,
Who's saying we need this, not this?
for the, I guess the general rule is for the clubs, generally there's one advisor. Some teachers decide they want to actually do it together, not necessarily because there's too many kids to manage, you just feel like teachers like working together, are interested in it, and they'll split the stipend. For sports, it varies based on the sport, but the model is generally, for varsity, there's a coach and an assistant coach, and then, the JV team has a coach and the freshman team has a coach, although those are generally considered, I believe they're listed in Stable F as assistants. So if there's 3 levels to a sport, they'll generally have 1 head coach and 3 assistants. But we know that there are other sports based on the number of kids and, decisions that were made before any of our time. For example, football obviously has more than, 4 coaches. That's certainly something that we can't renegotiate those positions. The board has every right to fill or not fill those positions. So that's, and some of the positions on Stable F do not get filled because there are clubs that have not run in a number of years. There's no student interest. That obviously changes over time. And that's actually another item that was brought up at Ed Council, where we asked the association, if that's something that we look at revisiting so that Stable F is more representative of what we actually do. But in terms of since I have been here, and anything that we've added, the rationale for that has been that sport, the enrollment in that sport has increased tremendously. And so we realized that, for student oversight and safety reasons and for the growth of the student athletes, the board just collectively decided to add a coach. So when we added one, we've actually, when it's been up to us to determine that, we've had a discussion about that. But in terms of the original design around some of the sports and different numbers of coaches, that I don't necessarily have,
We don't have current data on the participation numbers and how it correlates to the number of staff.
We have done that because we've discussed that. Personnel.
For this year, we have that?
I don't know if we have it for this year, but the board has answered that
I would love to
before.
see the correlation between the number of participants in an activity and the number of staff assigned to that activity. It seems out of balance in some areas. And that can certainly, when we're making cuts, that there's an awful lot of salary.
And so the items that have been added that are not part of Schedule F, they just still show up here as a regular assignment, so we don't know what's on schedule after. I mean, sure we do, but we can't tell here what's from schedule after and what's from.
I don't differentiate the things we've added outside of Schedule F. I mean, I can highlight it. It's not many.
Yes.
Most of this is directly from Schedule F. I budget for every position. That doesn't mean, and I think you said the board doesn't have to fill every position, and a lot of times we don't. But I still gotta make the funds available.
But to Liz's earlier point, if we budget for every position, but, that's on the schedule, but we're not actually filling every position that's on the schedule, there's some breakage in there.
Correct.
I think that would be helpful too.
Yeah.
The home instruction line, is that which one, 150, is that home instruction?
Yes.
Correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's also in special ed category too. It's not a small amount in special ed. It's in 11,
And then there's a transportation.
Yes. No.
So, that's for out of district. Right, okay.
Dr. Chbelsky?
I just wanted to make a comment because I suspect if the public hears only a small segment of, we were at 2% flat for a number of years, and now all of a sudden it's 4%, it will come as a shock. But if you take a simple look at the budget, let's round it out to $40 million, and a 2% cap, that's $800,000 of increase in a year. If you look at annual increases of health benefits of 11%, and it can be twice that, having seen that in the K-8 district, that's already $500 in this year. If you look at special education, 40% in 2 years, $600,000, that's $300 for 1 year. You already had your $800 there spent before you've taken care of anything else in terms of capital improvements and maintenance, et cetera. So essentially, it is unsustainable, as Mr. Morrison just pointed out, and that's why we're, in a sense, forced. We've been able to delay this issue for a number of years, as Mr. Stiles pointed out, because of the escalating contribution to the board's health benefits, but that's no longer escalating, and so now we're getting to the time where we do have to pay the piper. That doesn't mean that we're not going to critically look at all of the expense items to see where we can save so that we can invest in not only the maintenance of the school, but also the programs that help our students.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Stiles. All right, moving on, we have the review agenda items for the next meeting. I don't know if there's anyone that had any comments on the review items. I'm sorry, the review agenda items. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, any future discussion items from the table? All right, then we move on to our agenda items for this evening. Go to the A items under administration.
I'd like to move items A1 to A6 and A9 to A10.
Second. Great discussion. Any questions or comments on any of those items? Seeing none, roll call vote, please, Mr. Sims.
Ms. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter? Yes. Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
I'd like to move items A7 to A8.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsaker? Yes. Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Please carry.
I'd like to move items C1 through C5.
Second.
Discussion? Any discussion? You good, John?
Yeah, I think so.
Fahey? Yes. Mr. Hunsinger? Martin? Yes. Dr. Batista? Yes. Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Marson?
Yes.
I'd like to move items D1 and D2.
Discussion?
And this is the last stage, not the beginning?
This is for our last day. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Ms. Barone?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Ricchio?
Yes.
Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger? Yes. Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Dr. Batista? Yes. Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Marson?
Yes. This is the second opportunity for public comment. Yes, sir. Come on up and please, your name and town.
Sorry, I know you guys don't know all this stuff, and my calculus so much, so. But, one thing, I know you guys talked about the budget, one thing I was talking with my friends and colleagues, actually today, as well as in my economics club meeting was, had to do with TP tests. I know the registration process has begun for that, I think it's coming up, the deadline is coming up soon. And it's about $100 to take each test. Personally, this year, I plan on taking about 6 tests, so that you come out to $600, which is obviously quite a bit of money. And so what we were discussing with my friends and peers was whether it be possible for the board to subsidize part or at least some of the cost of that AB test. I know Ms. Judy mentioned in the presentation that we had a number of national AB scholars, which means that those students have received 4 or above on at least 8 AB tests, which would be, they'd have to pay out of their pocket $800, which is quite a bit of an amount. I mean, those are well high achieving students, and they deserve, they don't deserve to be hindered by financial restrictions. And so I don't know if, I'm allowed to ask the question, but is that something that, I know the budget is tight, but is that something that could be worked in? I know you mentioned that we had 1,000 tests taken, so multiplied by 100, that's about $100,000 that would have to be spent. I know that's a lot of money, but then again, looking at the budget, we may not see a lot of money, so that's just a question / recommendation that I want to raise.
Thank you. And in this environment, we don't get into question and answer during public comment. But no, you're fine. But what you've done is you've been able to put that, on the table, and I'm sure the administration will go back and take a look at that and then come back with an answer.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, please do.
I'd like to put some agenda for the education committee. This is something that I've tried to do in the past. Years ago, when I was paying one of them, talking to my kids, and I felt the time my answers were not satisfactory, so that I'd like to revisit it and understand why $100 and where that money goes. So I'd like to go on the education committee there.
It is all run by the college board,
Oh,
so I will say that. So I just don't want anyone to think we're charging
No.
$100 on taking it. But we can absolutely speak to that, so.
Well, that's kind of part of the problem with the monopoly that TS has on, they basically charge whatever they want.
All right, so we have an agenda item, correct?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, is there any other business any board member wants to bring up at this point in time? Sir,
Just a quick comment, no, it's okay.
I'm going to teach you just to pat you on the head.
All right, I want to be accused of that. Since the homework issue came up, and I'm very supportive of prohibiting as best as possible homework over the longer breaks, it may be advisable to poll students in various areas to be sure that in fact that's happened, because what may be told and what is actually in operation may be a different experience.
Well, and reciprocally, some of our children may say they've been assigned homework when they actually were assigned 2 months earlier. It shows that they're finally addressing them.
It is possible, only suggesting that the information be gathered.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. as funding and moving forward. But we kind of put a pause on it and talked about it in operations. So we're not really doing anything other than, the architect discussed the plans with us, the cost and whatnot. But there's no green light, there's nothing until the board says, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
I thought one of the discussions possibly was gonna come up tonight was, obviously the cost of mothballing is the cost of closing a room, which I don't make any sense. The cost of making a room, the cost of keeping the program as is, and the cost of stepping up the program.
So the cost of just getting the room back to an empty space that is usable, so this means without any kind of equipment or furniture or anything, is around $200,000 is the estimate that we received. And that's, if we decide to make it a computer lab, we obviously have to invest in that, so that's just fair, getting it back to a usable space. That's in
16, 17,
Yes.
And that's in addition to the money that we've already spent.
And
Yeah,
then,
for temporary.
and if we were to get it back to the same condition that it was in prior to us having to close the room, without obviously the issues, but getting it back to the foods room, as it was when the school year opened, that estimate was $300,000. In order to upgrade the program to a more relevant, timely, modern program that is more hospitality-based and has more has commercial equipment, that the estimated cost for that, and I say estimated for all of this, is $500,000.
So 235.
And just so everyone, has an awareness of the enrollment in that program and how many students, it does sound like a lot of money, but kind of as Lev was talking about before, when we look at the number of students, that a program impacts or in terms of staff, we do fill 8 sections of that per semester, so it's 200 students per semester, so it's 400 total seats for the year. So if we decided not to go forward with the renovation, we'd have to find another space for those students in those classes, so it would involve hiring and, increasing of some other program or electives.
And Liz, how many sections does that represent, rough numbers?
So it's 8 total, it's 16 sections for the year. It's 8 sections in the first semester, runs every period of the day, first semester and second semester. This is our general ed classroom. It doesn't mean that there's not, for the LLD program, they have their own kitchen. It doesn't mean that special ed students might not be, they are in these classes, but in terms of the foods room that's used for the LLD program, that's a separate kitchen. And that's what these students were, yes, and these students were actually sharing with them during the renovation.
So it's one of our most popular classes.
Yes, you could say that. I believe that would be an accurate statement.
With this, why do you believe it's popular? Is it because it's fun, or are we seeing a trend in students looking to go into hospitality or culinary arts?
I would say that the way the program is right now, it's not designed for students who are looking to go into hospitality or culinary arts. That doesn't mean that some of them may not decide to pursue that. The few students, we have, I think, 3 to 4 students from our district that are in the culinary program at VOTEC. Because when I go there monthly for my meetings and they all announce where they're from, there's at least 3, possibly 4 that are from our district. But the VOTEC schedule is very difficult. A lot of our students, if they play sports or there's other classes they want to take here, VOTEC may not be an option for them, a practical option. So the fact that we're able, we are a large comprehensive high school, we are able to offer a lot of options to our students, I think is one of the great advantages of being a larger high school. In terms of the current popularity of the program, I think one of the, first of all, for kids, you get to cook, you get to eat food, that's going to be a draw. But in terms of looking at the, some of the educational aspects of it, it's very different from the other courses that our students take. It's a unique program in the school. As our student who attended here tonight mentioned, he's taking, a half a dozen AP exams. It's a nice break and change in a student's day from some of their other, core book-driven, more academic content-driven courses. So it's a way for them. It's a creative outlet for them. And when we're talking about social and emotional wellness, I think it's good for students to have balance in their schedules. And we do have a number of students though, just last, I believe it was either last year or the year before, we approved the culinary club, which has a very active following. You know, the student that heads that does want to go into some kind of culinary career, but attends here, not low tech, but that is her passion. So, you know, do I think that the majority of the students who take our foods classes are going to do it as a career? No. However, do I think that it certainly has an educational benefit for them? Absolutely.
I'm sorry, 500 level.
Yes.
Increase our curriculum in this area to educate students on, when you keep saying hospitality.
Yes.
You're talking about numerous fields.
Well, that's what
combined. Is this going to open up the curriculum and say, we're educating our students on what's out there to expand their horizons?
That's our, you know, ideally there's a lot of possibilities with what, the difficult piece about what we're doing right now is in an ideal world, if we were looking to expand the program to have more of a hospitality focus and a, you know, commercial cooking focus, we would be planning that all out, then renovating the room, but because of the issues we have in the room, where, you know, I said the other day, we're building the plane as we're flying it, because, you know, we have our timeline is not ideal. So what will likely happen is there will be a transition period where we will start to introduce courses like that because we need to develop a curriculum, but we've already visited some other programs. And, you know, ideally, and we've talked about this, is then, you know, adding accompanying courses in our business department that can complement, you know, the culinary program. So, and that's, again, this is me thinking / talking, you know, out loud about things that are not fully developed, but what we've talked about as possibilities, what we started talking to other districts about. And in terms of looking at other districts, a lot of who've had traditional home economic programs, this is what they've been transitioning to.
Mary?
The article I gave you in
Yes.
is all about the public schools in high school. And how it's taking off in high schools that never got involved in this. And not just vocational, other regular high schools like ours, not against high schools, are doing this, and it's just getting more and more popular.
Lisa?
Request for the $500,000 option. Isn't there a cost for additional equipment?
That's part of that. That's what makes, yes.
That's
The
really the difference.
equipment is real, yes. The equipment is really
Wait. I believe that is not all inclusive. I think that was about the machinery in the room. It wasn't talking about the additional supplies and materials to support the program, which we, in operations, we actually asked to get a better sense of what's the all-in cost of doing this, so.
And I thought we got the answer that, again, we wouldn't necessarily have every pot and it's gonna be the first day, it would be something that would be growing
Exactly.
over a period of time.
Can I ask a question about staffing? We talked about the difficulty of getting staff for what we have now, because of the culinary program. All of our teachers are they hiring, directors and hiring for that program?
No.
So you plan on still having, all right.
Yes.
Right.
Can you do alternate route to staff someone for a culinary program?
We do have additional options, if we turn it, actually, we don't even have to make it a CTE program, but there's a different certification now for culinary arts that is a CTE certification, which you can teach in a high school, even if it's not a CTE program. So that's what we would be able to get, because there's no schools in New Jersey that actually still give, it's the Family and Consumer Science certificate.
They no longer, the Department of Education no longer issues the instructional certificate for Family Consumer Science is the overall title, and then there's 3 in there. It's actually the child development, the foods, and then the fashion design, and the 3 separate certificates. And there's a comprehensive. They don't longer issue that. It's all CTE. So again, you can have a comprehensive certificate where you can teach all 3 of those subjects through CTE, or it can be just food, or just child development, or the fashion.
And CTE is kind of the CTE version of alternate route, where you may have worked in the hospitality or food industry, and then, you know, by taking certain courses and meeting certain requirements, you can get the teaching cert without going through a traditional education program.
Right.
I don't know if Lenny was hinting at this, but it sounded like trying to get a pulse of the students and learning whether this this upgraded plan or not may have been part of your questioning, but perhaps Liz can speak to, because I think I remember her saying the experience in other high schools in the state who have introduced this and what has happened to their program might be a barometer as to what might happen if you're doing the same thing. So
yes, I mean, and our administrators and teachers who went to visit, they went to visit VOTEC and they went to visit Freehold Regional District as well. It continues to be, the most popular elective in the high school. And my prediction, because this is what's happened, in talking to colleagues from other schools, that students who may not have ever considered that as an option, as a career later on, if we give them more experiences in it, it may ignite that interest in them. Something as simple as the fact that we're having our culinary students prepare the breakfast and do the breakfast with the characters before the play. We talked about opportunities to get them more involved in those types of school events, so that they get every experience from planning to catering. One of the things that I was talking to Mrs. Kurtz today in the hallway, and she was saying, because she's been talking to the students so much about merchandising and the marketing for the play, that in the past they've never cared about how much money is in the account or what the script and Q students now are asking her, how much money are we up? How much have we generated? So they really, because they feel invested in it because they were part of it. And that's why, again, I know it's a lot of money, and we do certainly have to make difficult choices because we can't offer everyone to everything. But because we don't offer anything else like this in the school, that I really do think that it is a valuable program for our students, across the spectrum of abilities and interests and aptitudes. You mean our previous program or versus?
Right, yeah,
Our traditional, the upgraded program, I think, has more relevance currently. The previous program, it was a wonderful program, but I think it was more, it's not as updated to what we could be offering our students currently. So I certainly, if we're going to make the investment, I think that we'll get more of a return on our investment if we, do the upgraded version.
I just want to add, whatever level ends up being, and I'm a supporter of this, and it's from the Alternative Financing Committee, but don't discount the fact that there are numerous restaurants that might want to help underwrite this and sponsor this department. It's perfect for a number of businesses out there, so we would be crazy not to undertake a discussion about putting the word out there.
I would think even for equipment too, donations, but I know they would be probably more than willing to come in and do demos for the students and speak to them, so.
All right, Ms. Tamizio.
Budget on this, what's the budget after this?
So what we did, Lisa, was we took funds from capital reserve in this current school year and set them aside for this project. So I put $500,000.
upgraded version.
Yeah. So the funds are set.
All right, if we decide to $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah, I just went right back into capital reserve.
I have a couple comments on this. Particularly driven by the conversation that preceded this, and the fact that we have growing and thriving programs that we're not investing in currently. It becomes difficult to justify making a significant investment in a new program, given the fact that we have to look out into the future. What are the additional costs that come along with that program, and how do we take a look at how that plays out over time? For me, it's very difficult. I know we have it in we pulled it from capital reserve, but there's other capital projects that we've been kicking down the road. And again, when we look at how we use the limited resources that we have to address the things that we need to do and to support the things that we have in the building that are already successful that we're not supporting, to go ahead options down the hill, as it relates to VOTEC. And yeah, I understand it would be great to have, and believe me, I wish that I could turn the clock back 2 weeks ago when I was fully supportive of it before I was looking at this budget and what was happening into the neglect into some of our other programs. So, for me, it's very difficult to support given what we just talked about.
Bob, I appreciate the point you're making, but I liken it very much to, do I put an addition on my house versus do I hire a full-time cooking person to cook for me at my house all day long, right? One is a capital expenditure that creates value and allows something to go on based on the current cost. We're not adding more staff to do that. Do we need pots and pans? We're going to need pots and pans for existing program. If you're saying, if you want to have a conversation, should we discuss getting rid of this program? That's a valid conversation. If you're saying that this is an expenditure, well, it's going to go into another capital project. That's the budget that it's in. It's in a reserve for capital projects. So the administration is saying they believe for a capital project that this is the best use of those funds. If we want to have a different discussion, but if we're talking about expanding programs and adding staff, that's a different box over there. And I'm happy to have that conversation, but it can't be had in the same box as a capital expenditure.
I recognize that, but we just heard the description of, creating hospitality and expanding beyond that. Again, I think that, as we move down that road, we're committing to going down to that particular pathway. I understand your point about.
That's a business class that would be a different business class replaced by another one, so it's not an additional cost. You have a section that may not be as popular or may be outdated in the coming years, and this would be replaced, right? So you're not saying we're gonna add a whole other business class and not have the same staff that we have. I haven't heard that.
Well, we don't know that because we haven't been presented with a plan on how to do that. But again, it comes down to, is this the best use of capital costs at this time? Are there other things that need to be invested in, to be supported in this building? When I look at the things on Tim's list that he took off the list, for the budget this year, and how many years are we going to keep neglecting the locker rooms that need to be refinished? And we've got to make some hard decisions.
If I guess to Bob's point earlier about the VOTEC, if these students wanted to take that course, could we send them to VOTEC, and what would be the impact of sending them to VOTEC versus having that robust program?
Just so you know, the entire program of VOTEC is maybe 20 students, and that's for the entire county. So, it's not, we're talking about 400 seats in our high school, maybe a couple of them.
What I'm hearing is, I'm trying to remember exactly how this happened, but I don't know on the board. This is a room that had a mold problem.
Yes.
So what we had this program, after the mold problem related to food on, okay? So now, because the mold happened, we have to at least spend $200,000, correct? Because otherwise, we have a room that is sealed off and can't ever use it.
Yes.
If we just do that, what would you use that room for?
Yeah, and it's a huge room, and so we would have,
It would
we
be
probably
a
ended up putting up a wall, we'd end up, yes.
Okay.
Or we turned it into a giant computer lab and have to spend a lot of money on that. We have to figure out how to make it usable space.
It was mold, and then it was years of, quite frankly, not being in compliance with the ventilation. I mean, the ventilation was going up through the ceiling. So that's a major part of the cost, no matter what we do. So if we stick with the home ec, we still have to correct that issue.
And that's the $200,000?
No, the 300,000.
300, just
To get us to par, where we were is 300,000.
And the cost to bring it to just a regular classroom, you're talking a couple $100,000, but you're gonna have to ship ventilation, things are gonna have to change in that room. Now, if you make it a computer lab, or any kind of computer type thing, that's gonna increase that cost again, because you're gonna have to put additional air conditioning in that room. Because the demand of those computer units raises the heat, the whole thing. So it's difficult. I mean, 200,000 is a base level for a classroom. But if it's a technology-driven classroom, that raises that. So it's a difficult proposition. No matter what, it's going to cost us something. It's just a question of, to Bob's point, administration and the board feels is the need, and it's a lot of money. And Bob's right, there are other things that we keep kicking down the road. Perfect example, a baseball field that needs repairs, and more than what we want to do with it. Those are minimum things that we want to do, but that's an example. The locker rooms, gym 3, 4 floor.
Tennis courts.
Don't even bring up the tennis courts. That's upsetting. But the tennis courts that were born in 1964, so they're my age, how about that? So, you know, and I'm in better shape.
So,
Right.
Right, so the way I look at this, and you may want to consider it in this light, is that it is a currently successful program from what I hear. Every period, all year long. So the $300,000 is the minimum investment, and so we're really talking about a difference of $200,000, $250,000. So that's the number that we're fundamentally talking about. And in terms of investing in success, if that is successful and there is some information out there in the state that when you upgrade it, it is even more successful, is that not investment?
Tim, since a lot of that room would be equipment, did you at least purchase that and spread that additional cost out over a couple of years?
Not really. Generally with an equipment lease, the banks look for things that they can take. So if you're fixing it to the wall or attaching it.
Probably too long in life too, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. That's the, you can do, the only thing you can do is a facilities lease, which is much, much more difficult. We've done it before here. We've done a facilities lease here, and it's but from what I hear, the local finance board down in Trenton is not fond of these type of arrangements at the moment. But I wouldn't recommend it for this kind of thing. I would tell you, you have to, if you're going to do it, take the capital reserve that you have there and just fix, get it done. Because it's that many kids. It's a lot of kids.
Just one other comment, I fairly enough long as we're a little over 5 years now, I think I'm the oldest one of operations at this point. But with that in mind, unfortunately, the reality of what we're dealing with in terms of budgetary goals, our capital expenditures are going to have to keep going to bonds. So when one bond rolls off, we're going to be forced to do another one. And this is how we're going to get capital projects done, except for smaller ones like this. That's the reality of the situation that we live in, unless something changes in Trenton. I'll pull my fingers and cross my toes.
Well, unless they bring back the facility grants, which they aren't doing right now. So in order to do these capital projects of this size, you actually got, it is a referendum process. And the earliest one we have coming up, when you asked that, is 2024.
That's what I figured.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, and so I'm a broken record on it, but we can't talk about kicking the can down the road. There are hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars out there in sponsorship and naming right that could cover locker rooms and tennis courts and gym floors and those kind of facilities by putting banners up and giving people exposure that would allow us to save budget money in other areas. And it needs a long, deep conversation.
And I think you get to start part of that conversation or continue that tomorrow. So what do you need from us tomorrow? Just a sense from the board.
If you give me your blessing to give the green light to our architect to move forward with the bid specs, then I'm good to go.
I have one question. They cut back on your users.
They cut that one.
Oh, yes, from the last operation, do you
Yeah.
committee work, committee meeting, yes. That's how we got the number back down.
The burners.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
Don't get into public bid, so.
Is it gonna be like?
It's whoever comes in, but, yeah.
It's X or equivalent.
Randy or
So the architect, so you need, we're not voting on it.
No, we just,
Consensus that the architect.
because we don't want to go through all of this again.
The architect put the bid up.
We want to just know that we should keep continuing with the process.
Right, we don't need a vote.
Don't need a vote.
No. Just need your blessing.
Kind of nod and say, go ahead.
Go ahead.